In the mid-1980s, members of historic peace churches were seeking new ways to express their faith. In 1986, many discussions culminated in a late fall gathering at the suburban Chicago Retreat Center owned by the Society of the Divine Word in Techne. God granted a spirit of unity in the gathering of over 100 persons, and a call went out for the formation of Christian Peacemaker Teams, CPT. Representative denominations appointed a steering committee to hammer out basic directions and invited Gene Stoltzfus to begin work as the first staff person in 1988. Gene Stoltzfus began working alone, and over 17 years the staff grew to a sizable number. During that time, Gene served as the sole director for CPT. When Gene announced in 2002 he was retiring, the steering committee appointed Doug Pritchard and Carol Rose as co-directors in 2004. Doug and Carol worked together until 2010. At that time, Doug gave notice that he was retiring after over 6 years of service. The steering committee created a task force with broad representation to analyze the co-director model. The steering committee received the report from the task force and decided to continue with the co-director structure. A search committee was appointed to search for a new co-director, and after an extensive search, Mervyn DeMello was appointed in 2011. The transition period between Doug's tenure and Merwyn's start was not ideal, and left Carol as the sole director for a period of several months. Then, the first few months of Merwyn's work with CPT coincided with the unexpected death of a beloved staff member, the annual January training, and a complicated personal issue that took much emotional and physical energy. In addition, the steering committee had purposely not assigned specific responsibilities to Carol and Mervyn, so time was needed for the co-directors to sort these out. The stress and weight of the first few months of Merwyn's time with CPT took its toll, and in early 2012, Mervyn announced that he was leaving his position. The steering committee affirmed the hiring of an interim assistant director to help Carol in her work, and Tim Nafziger was appointed to fill that role. This shift in leadership structure and needs caused the steering committee to rethink the co-directorship model. Approximately 10 years prior, conversations had occurred in the steering committee about decentralizing the leadership structure of CPT and empowering the project sites to take more responsibility and power in the development of CPT. This conversation topic arose again in the steering committee and has been discussed for the past 10 months. The steering committee first conducted a research project to learn about the leadership structure, decision-making processes, and decentralized funding processes of organizations with similar mission and values as CPT. The first round of research was internet-based and looked at 11 different organizations. The second round of research consisted of interviews of staff members from 3 of the organizations previously researched, as well as members of CPT. Each piece of research was presented to the steering committee and discussed. In April of 2013, the steering committee met with a sizable part of the agenda devoted to deciding on a solution for the leadership needs of CPT. The current structure of director and assistant director was put in place as an interim structure, and that interim period was coming to an end. In addition, Carol let the steering committee know that she would likely not seek to continue as a director of CPT after the end of her term in August 2014. In the days prior to the steering committee, the support team met to strategically plan for the coming years and talk amongst themselves about the leadership needs of CPT. The support team recognized that CPT needed an executive director who was free from some of the programmatic and communication responsibilities that currently took up most of the director's and the assistant director's time, so that time could be spent with fundraising, in donor development, in grant writing, and in promoting CPT to the general public, a so-called face of CPT. So the support team recommended to the steering committee a leadership model with an executive director and 2 managing directors, one for program and one for communications and outreach. This recommendation was then brought before the steering committee for discussion. Through a series of small and large group activities, the steering committee discussed the support team's recommendation and the prior conversation about decentralizing CPT. Towards the end of the 5-day steering committee meeting, the following statement was affirmed. The steering committee of CPT wants to work towards a network model of leadership, and thus affirming the desire for the internationalization of CPT through a decentralized structure that would empower various CPT entities in different parts of the world. While this may be the direction that CPT will strive to transition into, current institutional needs require a period of capacity building, which the support team's recommended structure will allow for. Therefore, the steering committee affirmed the creation of a search committee to search for an executive director to start January 2014, and thus affirmed the transition to the executive director to managing directors model in the next 9 months. The executive director, who may be hired in January of 2014, would be hired with the intention of supporting CPT in its transition to an internationalized structure within 3 years. Part of this first phase of transition is also to conduct an extensive listening and visioning process that 1. Fully imagines what an internationalized model of CPT could look like, and then 2. Seeks feedback from all parts of CPT on this imagined model and the process for CPT to achieve it. Future transition phases may include skill building, formation or strengthening of local advisory committees for project sites, and the development of local teams in the taking on of tasks such as trainings, undoing oppressions work, communications and website, and fundraising. What this internationalized model might look like is still unknown and will be drafted over the next few months for feedback and review. If you have ideas or feedback for the future of CPT in terms of structure and function, please email leadership.feedback@cpt.org.